My name's Julian. I'm 30. And over the years, I've realized that just because someone shares your last name doesn't mean they're on your side. Growing up, my older brother Evan was the golden child. Everything he touched turned to praise. Straight A's? Must be his work ethic. A decent internship? Pure talent. Me, I was the quiet one, the daydreamer, the one still figuring things out. I never resented Evan. Not at first. I figured everyone had their own path, and mine just looked different. But the older we got, the more those small digs turned into full-on jabs, and eventually, open mockery wrapped in polite chuckles at family dinners. And no one, not our parents, not our cousins, ever told him to knock it off. Why would they? He was the success story, the one they bet on. I work in what most of them still call online stuff. I started early, teaching myself about markets, automation, digital revenue models, things you can't exactly show off at Thanksgiving, but it paid off, slowly, quietly. I was never flashy. I reinvested, scaled up, lived simply. By 28, I had several automated income streams that pulled in enough to make working for someone else optional. But try explaining yield farming or digital arbitrage to a room full of boomers who still think you're unemployed if you don't wear slacks to a cubicle. My mom once asked me if I needed money because I looked like I had free time. I just smiled and told her I was doing fine. They didn't ask twice. Then came Evan's promotion. He landed a director position at his firm, some mid-tier real estate company, and you'd think he discovered fire. My parents planned a party like it was a wedding. They rented a private room at a rooftop bar downtown, ordered catering, decorations, printed little menus with "Congratulations, Evan" in gold foil. I got an invite like everyone else, complete with a note from Mom, "Please be on time and dress sharp." This means a lot to him. I shrugged it off. I didn't mind going. I was happy for him, genuinely. What I didn't expect was how far they'd take it. I showed up in a navy blazer and dress shoes, gift in hand, nothing crazy, just a bottle of vintage bourbon he'd once said he liked. The room was already buzzing. My cousins were clinking glasses. The music was soft jazz. And Evan was right in the middle, grinning like a politician, the man of the hour. He spotted me and waved me over, but not before scanning what I was wearing like he was rating it out of 10. "Hey, Jules," he said, pulling me into a one-armed hug. "Didn't know you owned a blazer?" I laughed it off. "Didn't know you owned humility?" I joked. He smirked, but it didn't reach his eyes. That set the tone for the night. During the speeches, yes, speeches, my dad actually said, "We're so proud to have raised such a strong, capable man. Evan's the embodiment of hard work paying off." Then my aunt added, "He's the family's real success." Real. I remember that word like a slap. I glanced around the room. No one flinched. Not even my mom, who just smiled and dabbed her eyes. When the champagne popped, I lifted my glass like everyone else. But the fizz didn't drown out the burn in my throat. After that, things just got worse. The bartender tapped me on the shoulder, handed me a trash bag, and said, "Your brother said you'd help with cleanup. Start with the bottles." I blinked. "Excuse me?" But before I could ask again, Evan leaned in from across the bar and said, loud enough for others to hear, "Come on, man. Help out a little. It's not like you've got work tomorrow." The table chuckled. I forced a smile and took the bag. As I bent to grab a cluster of empty glasses, one of our uncles muttered, "Nice of him to pitch in." I wasn't sure if he meant it sincerely or sarcastically. At that point, it didn't matter. Later in the evening, after the cake and the toasts, I was leaning near the railing, sipping quietly and watching the skyline. Evan joined me. His Rolex glinted under the patio lights, one of those obnoxiously large ones with a face the size of a coaster. "You know," he said, swirling his drink, "maybe one day you'll get a real job, too. Then we can celebrate you properly." His tone was light, but the venom was there. Always was. I didn't react right away. I just sipped my drink, glanced at my own wrist, nothing flashy, just a leather strap Seiko I liked for its simplicity. Then I looked him in the eye and said, calm as ever, "I thought about it, but then my lazy money started earning more than you." His smile faltered. "What's that supposed to mean?" he snapped. His voice rose just enough to draw a few looks. "You sitting at home messing with apps or crypto or whatever doesn't make you successful. It makes you a leech." Now that was new, direct, unfiltered. I could feel the heat in my chest, but I didn't let it show. Instead, I raised my glass, gave him a toast-worthy nod, and said, "Cheers to the only success here who still needs a boss." That's when things started to shift. His jaw tightened, his fingers clenched around his glass. For once, I saw something flicker in his eyes that looked a lot like doubt or fear. But I wasn't done. Not yet. He tried to recover, laughing a little too hard. Right. Because passive income is just code for mooching off the system. Then he stepped closer. You think this? He gestured to the party, the guests, the view. You think any of this just happens? This takes real effort, real grind. You wouldn't last a week doing what I do. I didn't flinch. You're right, I said. I wouldn't, because I'd never give up my freedom to climb someone else's ladder. And just then, my dad walked over, catching the tail end. What's going on here? He asked, brow raised. Evan straightened. Nothing, he said quickly. Just talking, but his eyes were still locked on me, and the storm behind them was only just beginning. I could feel it, like a crack in the foundation of something that had been crumbling for years. This wasn't about a promotion. This was about control, image, who got to be the favorite. And I just shifted the weight. After that exchange, something in Evan changed. He didn't storm off or raise his voice again, but he wore this tight-lipped smile for the rest of the night, the kind that barely hides a bruise to the ego, the kind of smile that says, "I'll deal with you later." I wasn't surprised. Evan had always been the type to collect slights like they were debts. But unlike me, he didn't believe in letting things go quietly. No, Evan believed in settling scores, and he didn't like losing face, especially not in front of family. The next morning, I woke up to a group text from my mom. It was a long, meandering message about tone and how family events should be about support, not showmanship. She didn't mention Evan by name, but it was clear who she was defending. I didn't reply. 10 minutes later, she texted me privately. You embarrassed your brother on a very important night. Was that necessary? I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the keyboard. Then I locked the phone and placed it face down on my desk. Let her stew. For the next week, I stayed quiet, didn't post anything, didn't reach out, didn't engage, and that apparently drove them insane. On Thursday, my cousin Jordan messaged me out of nowhere. Hey, random question. How do you actually make money? I chuckled. I knew exactly where this was coming from. Evan must have been poking around, trying to figure out how I could afford the lifestyle I had without clocking in. I gave Jordan a vague but polite answer, and that was that, or so I thought. Friday morning, my accountant emailed me with an alert. Someone had tried accessing the back end of one of my smaller portfolio sites. Nothing major, just a branded dropshipping domain I rarely touched anymore. But the IP matched a device from my old hometown, and that narrowed the suspect list significantly. I didn't confront anyone. Not yet. I just changed every password, updated my 2FA, locked out my assets tighter than Fort Knox, but it confirmed what I already suspected. Evan couldn't just let it go. A week later, my mother invited me to brunch. Just us, she said. She missed me. I almost didn't go, but curiosity got the better of me. When I arrived, she was already seated at the little bistro downtown, stirring her tea like she was waiting for a confession. Julian, she began before I even sat down, why do you always have to make everything a competition? I laughed softly, without humor. Mom, Evan called me a leech at his own party. I didn't start that conversation. She sighed. You know how he gets when he's feeling threatened. Threatened by what? I asked. By someone who didn't follow the script and still came out ahead? She didn't answer. Instead, she changed the subject, asked if I was doing okay financially with that same tilted head concern she'd used when I was 22 and figuring things out. I stared at her. Mom, I said, I make more in a month than Evan makes in a quarter, and I don't have to beg anyone for PTO. Her face froze, not in anger, but confusion, like she genuinely didn't know what to do with that information. The following Monday, it happened. I was in the middle of reviewing an investment when I got a flood of notifications, tags, mentions, comments. My LinkedIn was blowing up. Evan had written a long, smarmy post about entrepreneurship myths and fake success stories that relied on luck, timing, and family handouts. He never used my name, but anyone who'd been at that party knew who he was talking about. It was subtle, but cutting. That same day, my cousin again, Jordan, sent me a screenshot. "Yo, your brother really pressed publish on this." The post ended with a smug line, "In the real world, we don't toast to algorithms. We earn respect the hard way." I stared at the screen, calm on the outside, but a storm brewing underneath. I wasn't going to respond publicly. That wasn't my style. But I'd been building something quietly for years, something none of them knew about. See, while Evan was climbing his corporate ladder and angling for LinkedIn likes, I'd been investing in local property, quietly acquiring units in our old neighborhood, buying them out from under mismanaged landlords, improving them, then renting them out at fair prices through a business entity with zero connection to my real name. It was something I started not to get rich, but to create stability, a legacy. And the irony? Evan's firm was trying to buy into that same neighborhood. I knew because I'd seen the proposal. They wanted to break ground on a new development, one that would need my parcels to proceed. I wasn't just a leech. I was the landowner. And I had no intention of selling. 3 days later, I got the call. It was a number I didn't recognize. Local area code, probably a business line. I almost ignored it, but something told me to pick up. "Hello?" There was a pause, then a clipped voice. "Hi, this is Marlene Roth from Whitestone Realty. We're coordinating a land assembly for a residential project in the Greenpoint district. You're listed as the managing partner for She paused, likely checking Redway Holdings LLC. We'd like to discuss a buyout offer for your properties on Fletcher Avenue." I leaned back in my chair, smirking. I'd been waiting for this. I kept my voice neutral. "I'm listening." She gave me the usual pitch: preliminary numbers, promises of a generous payout, early access to the development's architectural plans, even a vague mention of community benefits. It was all corporate fluff. I let her talk, nodding occasionally, until she dropped the name. "The project is being spearheaded by a regional development firm, Sable and Company. If you've heard of them, you'd be working directly with one of their directors, Evan Keller." Ah, there it was. I kept my tone polite. "Thank you, Marlene. I'll review the proposal and get back to you." We hung up. The next morning, I declined the offer by email, formally, respectfully, and with legal clarity. No counter, no negotiation, just a straight, "not interested in selling." I CC'd my attorney, added my property manager for good measure, and moved on with my day. 12 hours later, Evan called me directly. "Julian," he said, his voice low and tight, "what are you doing?" I played dumb. "What do you mean?" "Don't act stupid." "Redway Holdings." "That's you. Since when do you own property in Greenpoint?" I let the silence stretch. "Since you were still buying suits on credit," I said finally. "Why?" He didn't speak. I imagined him pacing in some sleek glass office, jaw clenched, hands gripping a desk he didn't actually own. "Do you understand what you're messing with?" he said eventually. "This isn't a side hustle, Julian. This is my job. My name's on this proposal, my bonus, my promotion. My department depends on this land deal going through. You're going to block an entire project just to what? Prove a point?" I stood up from my desk and walked to the window, watching the early evening traffic crawl by below. "I'm not blocking anything," I said. "I'm just not interested in selling. It's nothing personal." He laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Don't insult me. You think I don't know what this is about? You're bitter because I called you a leech." I let out a breath. "No, Evan, I'm not bitter. I'm just finally in a position where I don't have to tolerate disrespect from people who look down on me. That includes you. You are being petty." "No," I said, and my voice sharpened. "You're just not used to me having power. This isn't me making a scene at a party. This is business. And if your firm didn't do their homework and realize I control a third of your build site, maybe you should be the one rethinking who the real professional is here." There was silence on the other end. Then, quietly, "You could cost me everything." "You already cost me everything once," I said. "Respect, dignity, a family that saw me as more than backup talent. Maybe it's your turn." I hung up before he could respond. The fallout was immediate. I didn't hear from him for a week, but the silence didn't mean nothing was happening behind the scenes. My attorney forwarded me a revised offer, nearly double the original. I declined again. Then a third came in, this time with a time-sensitive clause and a personal note from Sable and Company's managing partner. I ignored it entirely. Finally, my dad called. Now, that was a surprise. We hadn't had a real conversation in months outside of birthdays and holidays. He usually delegated the emotional labor to my mom, but there he was, his name lighting up my phone like a ghost from a simpler time. I answered, "Hey, Dad." He didn't even say hello. "Julian, what's going on with Evan's project?" Straight to it. "Why?" I asked. "He sent you to talk me down?" He sighed. "He's under a lot of pressure. His boss is riding him hard. You know how these things work." "I know how leverage works." Yeah, there was a long pause. "You've made your point," he said, quieter this time. He was out of line. "He embarrassed you. But this affects more than just him. It reflects on the family." I felt something tighten in my chest. There it was again. That old weight. The family. The same family that laughed when Evan belittled me. The same family that called him the only success. The same family that handed me a trash bag and told me to help out. "You want to talk about reflection?" I said, voice barely above a whisper. "Then let's talk about what it looked like when your son was mocked in front of 20 people while his parents stayed silent." That was he started, but I cut him off. "I'm not selling, Dad. And if that makes things difficult for Evan, maybe it's time he learned that not every dash." Story number 2. To be honest, I have done this in the past. I have taken pre-hire drug tests for him. I hated doing it, but I did it. We look enough alike on his DL that we pull it off, and people at those clinics are more busy making sure you don't sneak something in your pants than with ID pick. My brother asked me first because he knew he was going to apply a couple of months ago. I said no and told him to get clean, and he got pissed at me. Then got my mom to take his side, and here we are. I hate doing this because I hate that I'm doing something illegal, and I hate that my brother won't stop smoking weed long enough to get a good job. I have nothing against weed, I just don't smoke. I hate how lazy and irresponsible he is. I would have to fly out and miss some school. But my mom is threatening to revoke my work permit. I work at a burger place part-time. I love my job, but I can only keep it if my GPA stays high and my mom and my guidance counselor sign a permission slip. Don't want to do anything illegal anymore, don't want to keep bailing out my brother, I hate doing this, period. My mom also threatened to kick me out of the house, but I think that one is a bluff. I would have to fly out Sunday, and I have a big chemistry test on Monday. I feel like I have no way out, this sucks. Let me know if any good ideas come to mind to help me do the best thing. TLDR, my mother is strong-arming me to take a drug test so my pothead brother can get a really good job.